All right. So welcome everyone. Really appreciate you coming to our first Wednesday Wildlife Wondering Lunch and Learn. Today we'll be speaking with Jennifer Snell Rullman. She is the Assistant Conservation Director at Snow Leopard Trust. Welcome, Jen.
Thanks, Tom. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. It's kind of crazy times, and we really appreciate you coming in to give us an update on what's going on with Snow Leopard Trust, how some of the support that the Seneca Park Zoo has created or helped Snow Leopard Trust with over the past few years, how that's going, and really just take a few, basically a reason to look at images of snow leopards and cute
Right,
little baby snow leopards, right?
right. Well, thank you so much. I really want to thank Seneca Park Zoo and all the supporters for having me today. And to everyone there, it's so nice to see so many people on this webinar today. And I just want to reach out and say that I hope everybody's healthy and doing well during this unprecedented time. It has been rather surreal, and I just want to acknowledge that and hope everyone's doing well out there. And it's great to be here today. It is always nice to have some good things to think about and talk about during this time. And I am Jennifer Snell Rullman. I'm the Assistant Director of Conservation at the Snow Leopard Trust, and I've been there since 2003, actually, helping with the conservation program. So quite almost 2 decades with the trust. And the Snow Leopard Trust is based, our main office is based in Seattle. I happen to be in Boston. We've become quite global. We have a director of development that's in Idaho, and our communications director is in Switzerland. We have 2 staff members in Sweden. And our model actually is that we have offices in 5 different countries in Asia where snow leopards range country, where snow leopards live. And in each of those countries, we support partner NGOs. And so, for example, in Mongolia, we have 10 Mongolian staff that manage the office there. They're all from Mongolia and native to the country. And that's how we work. We support and build capacity within each of the 5 countries where we focus. And we focus on those 5 countries because we believe that at least 75% of all the snow leopards live in the 5 countries of Mongolia, Pakistan, India, Kyrgyzstan, and China. However, on this map, you can see that snow leopards live in 12 countries in Asia. And so we do work with the government and to support snow leopard conservation in all 12 of those countries. We just don't have offices there that we support.
Yeah.
And,
So
yeah.
I just changed to this amazing image that you sent me a little bit earlier today.
Yeah.
And as you're talking about these countries, this is really crazy terrain. This is not for the faint of heart, and very few people are here, let alone ways for us to go out and track some of these cats and look for them and really gather data, right?
That's right. We often say that how do you study an animal that you can't see? And that can mean lots of different things for different species. Many different species are difficult to find or to see when you're studying them. But you look at this landscape and you realize that the topography makes it extremely challenging. And the range of a snow leopard is so large that there would only be a few snow leopards within this area that we can see. And so that makes it difficult as well.
Yeah.
Stunning habitat.
Beautiful, very beautiful. But really that, the inability to gather data for so long really made these cats almost like ghost-like, in a lot of people's history, or the thoughts of these. So as we look at, I took this from your 2018 annual report, and it really shows that the majority of your data has been collected since 2008. Is that when your collaring program really got in full swing? And if so, what was the reasoning behind that you really said, all right, it's time for us to go out and really gather data?
It's a great question, Tom. Before 2008, a lot of the information we had about snow leopards came from zoos. We didn't really know much about their behavior, the reproduction, but before 2008, we didn't know much about snow leopards in the wild. And we had been doing what I like to call random acts of conservation. You know, we knew snow leopards were in these 12 countries, these vast countries of Mongolia and China, and we felt like we needed to be everywhere to try to understand snow leopards, but we couldn't be everywhere. So we were doing these random acts of conservation and research. It was in 2008 that actually George Schaller suggested to us that we go big and go deep. And to what that meant is to really take a landscape approach and to find one landscape within each country that we could really start to understand what were the snow leopards doing there, how many were there, what were the threats to those snow leopards, and to really start to understand them, sort of like the Jane Goodall model of really understanding what the chimps were doing in Gobi. So we started a long-term ecological study in the landscape of the South Gobi Desert of Mongolia. You could see Orion Johansson there, who has started a collaring project, which really allowed us to start to understand how far does the snow leopard go? What is their range? And we've learned a lot about snow leopards since 2008 that we didn't know before. We've learned more about the scale and scope of their home range. We've learned things like, I wrote down a few of the things that we've learned, even things like that they feed mainly on large prey. Before we had the collaring project, we really estimated, many people thought that they mainly focused on small prey like rodents, marmots, for example. They kill, we've learned from the collaring study that they kill large prey every 8 days, more than twice than what we expected before, just as an example. We've learned that about their selection of prey, what they're selecting, whether it's more livestock or whether it's more wild prey. It's more wild prey, or ibex, to be specific, in this topography, in this landscape. So these are things that we didn't know before. And the way we can understand what they're eating is because they stay in one place for at least 2 to 3 days. And the signal lets us know that they are in one place. And once they move out, then we can go to that area and find out what they've killed.
Right. So you talked about Dr. Johansson. We do have a short video that was just posted on your Facebook that I thought was relevant to this discussion. So it's only about a minute long. We'll play that real quick.
Great.
Hi guys. I'd like to take this opportunity and share an update of what we're up to in these strange times. Normally, I would have been in Mongolia right now collaring snow leopards and ibex. Now you may think that that means that we're not collecting any data, but the nice thing with the collars is that the animals that are collared transmits their data, irrespective of whether we are in field or here. So instead of being in field, I'm at home here in Sweden and analyzing and writing up the data that we've collected so far. Last week we submitted a paper on how snow leopard cubs separate from their moms, and we can show there that snow leopards are real mama boys and that they actually separate at the latest of all large cats. So they stay with their mothers for about 21 months, and I think that's because the habitat in which they live is so harsh that they need a long time to develop enough to be independent. Hi guys.
There we go. So, you know, they talk about mama's boy. We have one of those at our zoo in Silver. That's going to be, he's going to be a year old this month, or a year old this month. So not surprising to hear that they're mama's boys, but, you know, really, you can only tell that story because of the data that you collect and having people out there. And another project that the zoo loves that Snow Leopard Trust does is the camera trap program. So I think about that initial image that I showed of all of those mountains and putting camera traps out. Can't be very easy, and it's got to be quite labor intensive, right?
It is. And we have amazing staff who go out, and in each region that we need to do a camera trap study, depending on the question, we put 40 cameras out so that we can make sure that we're capturing whatever snow leopards are in that region. And each camera can get 20,000 images, up to 15 to 20,000 images. And so in any given year, in a given season, we may have over 600,000 images to go through after we've collected all the camera data. So
Oh,
quite
sorry.
a lot of images.
Yeah, so I was going to say this is one of the other areas that Snow Leopard Trust is really impressive is you're out on the forefront looking at what AI and machine learning and organizations like Microsoft can do to help you be able to see a cat like in this background, or hopefully one day be able to tell individual cats from individual cats through their lifespan, right?
Yes, you may have seen the commercial with Kaustubh Sharma, our regional ecologist, and he's been able to work with Microsoft AI to help us. They are not able to identify individual snow leopards yet, but they can look at every camera, the 20,000 images, and tell us how many snow leopard images are on that camera, which saves us a ton of time. We might have a camera that the grass grew up in front of it and there are 15,000 images of grass. So if we can save time by not having a single person like myself sitting and looking at 15,000 individual images of grass, instead the AI can go through that camera for us, and then we just look at the snow leopard images that they've identified, and then we now can just go through those to try to identify the individuals.
So
and so it saved us a ton of time.
You speak about snow leopard images, so we'll spend a few minutes here showing some of the images that do come from your camera traps, and I think I've got like 4 images and then a sequence that I'm sure everybody will like seeing. But you spoke a little bit about what the cats can tell us, or what this data can tell us. Maybe if there's a little bit more of that as you see some of these images that you can tell about family groups or some of the updated news that you may know. So here's a few 3 or 4 of those images while you can talk about that.
Well, one of the things that's been amazing that the cameras have been able to tell us, especially the combination of collars and cameras in the same region, we've been able to follow females. We've been able to follow 5 females, and 2 of those, Anu and Dagina, have had 4 or 5 sets of cubs. So Anu, for example, has had 5 sets of cubs since we've been following her since 2008. And we didn't know that. I know, look at this one. Of the 2 cubs, they look like they're flying here. They're playing. That's caught in a camera trap in Kyrgyzstan. I mean, in Mongolia, actually. And anyway, we've been able to trace the genetic, the family tree for 4 generations. And we didn't know that snow leopards, Anu is 11 years old. We didn't know that snow leopards that old would still be having cubs, let alone having 4 or 5 litters. So it's been fascinating what we've been able to learn from following them on the cameras and seeing their cubs in survival rate, which is, we still need a lot more data. Here's a nice big guy on the ridge. This is a great series that we're able to catch. And you have to be, for those of you watching, you have to be quick and look up in the right-hand corner. So go ahead.
Well, we've got a couple images that you sent me, and then we've got one that rotates around. So hopefully it'll all work for them. But yeah, as Jen said, you have to pay attention and not look where you're expecting.
If you look up in the right-hand corner, that little thing that just blipped into, yes, that he's circling, that's actually a snow leopard, a cub that is jumping up in the air, and you'll see it land here at the next slide.
Yeah.
There it landed on
that's one of the funniest things. Snow leopards, to me, I was lucky enough to work with some of the cats that we have at Seneca Park Zoo, and I've worked quite a few species of big cats. Snow leopards are completely different than anything else. They are when we talk about enrichment, snow leopards are the ones that I think of when you really think about how important enrichment is, because they will play and engage in almost anything, and they have the funniest expressions.
I agree. I used to work with snow leopards at the Cincinnati Zoo. I had my beginning of my career was at the Cincinnati Zoo, working with the Cat Ambassador Program. And we had a snow leopard tundra, and it's when I realized snow leopards are different. They look at I think the world in very differently. Looking at the ceiling is perfectly fine to bounce off of, right? And to walk on, and the walls and the rocks around them. So they're very Tigger-like, frankly.
Yeah, yeah, very good.
The
Yes, that's
characters.
exactly right, right. So we've spoken a lot about what you can glean from the animal themselves, and we've spoken specifically about the animals. But
Mhm.
one of the reasons the zoo supports Snow Leopard Trust is because it's, as you said initially, it's much bigger than just the cat, right? We really look at sociology and the economics behind this. What are the driving forces to needing Snow Leopard Trust to be in this area?
Absolutely. I think, Tom, we've partnered together with Seneca Park Zoo for a long time. And I think one of the values that we share is that we realize it's not just about natural science, is not just about biology. Of course, we need to understand ecology and disease and prey, but from a biological standpoint, but we really need to be engaging with the local communities in a positive, respectful, long-term partnership, really. And to do that, we really need to be engaging in sociosciences as well, and having people who from a social science background who help us do that really well. And we have several different models of community-based conservation. And this one is highlighting the handicraft program that really helps build incentive by providing an economic opportunity for these herders living in 3 different countries where we have this program to take their natural skill, their skills in handicraft making and wool, um, making felt, and we can turn that into an economic opportunity for them.
And let me give the plug. People can, once we're reopened, can stop and buy this in our zoo shop because we're incredibly happy and excited to always be able to offer some of these products in the zoo shop and support this end of the project in addition to donations to camera traps and things.
Yep. And I do want to just say that this isn't something that we actually brought to the herders. This is an idea that came from the herders themselves. As we were doing interviews to find out what the conflicts were way back in 1998, the herders were saying, we can handle the losses that we have to predation from snow leopards, but we just can't afford the loss, the financial loss. So is there a way to add value to our handicraft, to our wool, our natural wool? And so a lot of the programs that we've developed have come from long discussions of sitting with herders in these different countries to find out what are the problems and what are your skills and what ideas do you have? What are the problems and what solutions would you like to see? And that to me, I said again, this is a shared value. It's not about getting buy-in. It's about engaging respectfully as a partner with these communities and long-term evolving those programs based on continued discussion and respect and transparency and looking at what emerging threats might come to the communities and the snow leopards and discussing them as we go.
And for sure, out of that has come a wonderful livestock program as well that does everything from insurance to vaccinations and really will help mitigate that end of it in addition to creating those alternative income sources, right?
Yes, we have a vaccination program. It's an animal husbandry that's a program that really tries to deal with the fact that in Pakistan, for example, there was a high level of disease within the livestock, and we were also concerned that that could leap over into the wild sheep and goat populations. And so together with the communities, we were able to really start a program that has increased their revenue, has helped their herds lower disease rates, has lowered their number of livestock that they actually have. We have corral programs that are helping to stop predation in the first place, and a number of other livestock protection programs by working with the communities. We need to stop depredation if and where we can, as well as building incentives for these communities.
And I honestly, I could probably talk to you all day about this, but we've only got about 7 minutes left in our schedule. So real quickly, it's obviously we're a zoo. As you said, we've been a partner with you for a long time. Agree with everything you said. Everywhere I travel, every project that I'm a part of is more about listening than going in and doing anything. And so can you speak a little bit about what the importance of zoos are to Snow Leopard Trust, not only in having the animals, you know, for conservation science and conservation care science being handy to do blood draws and things like that, but support and just as a holistic thought of what zoos are to Snow Leopard Trust?
You know, zoos are huge for us. You know, there are 100 and I think 60 zoos in the world right now that have snow leopards on exhibit. We have we're partners with 102 different zoos. They make up 12%. The money and support from zoos only is 12% of our revenue that helps us directly engage in conservation and research and protection of snow leopards. It's a huge amount of our revenue and our work helping us with the conservation efforts. You know, I could talk for 7 minutes, but I think, as you know, the one thing that zoos have that you have at the Seneca Park Zoo is you have a live snow leopard. How many people out there are going to be able to see a snow leopard in the wild? Not many, but we really need people to be able to fall in love with them, to start to care about them, to know what is a snow leopard and to want to protect them in the wild. And by coming to the zoo and seeing a snow leopard, they can do that. You reach millions of people a year that we would never reach, and have them fall in love with this cat right here.
Indeed, and as you sent me the video earlier, or the photos of the young one jumping, I just had to play for everybody if they haven't seen it. Kaba back in our old habitat doing his impression of that same type of behavior. So great.
Flying snow leopards is awesome.
So we will come back to the discussion here. I think we had everybody quite enthralled because we didn't get any questions, so that must have been it. Feel free, if you have questions, to type them in the Q&A at the bottom. I will say, Jen, one of the things that I absolutely loved that you said today was about the random acts of conservation, and I think that speaks. I think that speaks to the depths that you need to travel in order to understand conservation and understand how many holes you have in the data and how many holes in the answers, and how we go about trying to fill those holes. And I think that Snow Leopard Trust has done a phenomenal job of that, and I'm super excited to see where you go with it.
Yes, well, I have to say I need to be strategic. I love strategic planning. I'm a little bit nerdy that way. And one of the things I love about the trust is that there's a lot of visioning and strategy, really about what are the key critical questions that we need to ask and answer that we don't know. And I mean, you'd asked me earlier about data. One of the things about data is that when we started before 2008, we had a lack of data, right? There are huge gaps in our understanding about snow leopards. And so we need to be strategic to figure out what are the key things we need to answer first, and then go about answering those questions. All the rest, the cameras and the collars, those are tools that help us ask those questions.
I feel it's a lot like the taxonomic tree. You know, early on it was just pieces that we knew, and as we've grown in science over the years, then we've really been able to fill in some of those. So we've got a couple of questions on populations in the areas that you study. Are they increasing, decreasing? What do the genetics look like? Are they genetically diverse?
Yeah, so you know, we're behind in I would say in understanding genetically what's going on, because we haven't been able to really collect a lot of genetic to send genetics back and forth, and to have labs that can help us understand population. You know, there's nothing more than over the last 18 years that I've been there that we'd like to answer than what is the population of snow leopards, but we just don't know. And so this year, actually, 2019, we have engaged in a huge, for the first time, a population assessment of the wild snow leopards, working with all 12 countries. It's called PAWS, PAWS, the Population Assessment of Wild Snow Leopards, World Snow Leopards, I guess. And we're engaging through the GSLEP, the Global Snow Leopard Ecosystem Survival Plan. And all 12 countries are using the same methodology We've gone through trainings together, and we're all engaging in the same strategy and methodology, and surveying all 12 countries to try to understand for the first time a baseline population. We have a paper that just came out that you can read on our website, www.snowleopard.org, that just came out, that Orion actually has published, that states we believe that we are overestimating snow leopard populations from our camera trap studies by 35%.
Oh, wow.
Overestimating. So, and that may then trickle to other organizations for other species who are using camera traps as a basis for population assessment. And so we don't really know the numbers yet, but we're both trying to do this baseline study, surveys across all 12 countries with all 12 governments on board. And that's happening, it's been happening since 2019. We've surveyed all of Mongolia, for example, and so we're slowly ticking away at each country, getting this information in. It'll take a bit to get all of that baseline number, which will be an estimate. But we are also trying to evaluate our own methodology because no one else has a better methodology. We've started doing population assessments, trying to do that in 2003 when I began. We were just using sign surveys, trying to age and count the number of signs that were in the habitat, doing transects. And we found after 10 years of doing that it didn't tell us anything because you can't properly age. There are so many things wrong with it. So we weren't any further along with understanding population. So we moved to camera traps, right? And doing sign surveys together. But we're evaluating our own methodology, and right now it looks like we may be overestimating. What that means really is that we don't feel like we have a handle on the population being stable, right? If we're overestimating, we already feel like it could be in decline still. And so we need to continue to get this baseline and then evaluate our conservation programs and continue with this multifaceted approach to understand what's happening.
I will say, no matter what place in the world or what region in the world, getting 12 countries to all agree on the same thing is really respectable and really important work that you're doing. So I have to commend you, and I'm sure everybody that's watching is, because that's an incredible feat. And
to commend the governments, I have to say.
Right.
I mean, when that happened, I want to say in 2015, where all 12 countries came together under this program called the GSLEP, the Global Snow Leopard Ecosystem Population Plan, and the governments are working together, and that allows us to work with all the scientists together for standardized methodology, to get together to look at current maps with all 12 countries. It really is a game changer for what we're able to do together for survival of snow leopards as a species. And so that is something that I will say is a great accomplishment. And we actually added the GSLEP program as a big arm and a big focus for Snow Leopard Trust, is to support that and make sure that continues to go forward.
Great. So one person is wondering how high they can jump, since we've seen a couple of them jump. And I don't know if I know the actual answer on what an adult would be able to leap. Do you know?
I have seen anything from 25 to 30 feet in the air.
Yeah.
And most of that has come from zoo staff who know how high their exhibits reach and have seen them touch the top. So I've heard as high as 30 feet in the air.
So we are running out of time. There's one more question that hopefully won't be a very long answer. I'm sure it is, but maybe we can pare it down. What kind of impact are we seeing in snow leopards from climate change? Are we seeing the individuals are changing habitats and moving out of areas? Are we seeing that they're chasing prey or predator, or the prey is moving to other areas? What are you seeing? Anything that you can quantify yet?
Not yet. We do have several PhD students working on climate change studies and doing some modeling. And of course, there are different predictions of what could happen, but stay tuned. We should have some papers out on that I would say by the end of this year.
It's great, and I'm sure that we will do our best to tell that story with it once the paper comes out.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
one final question, and I'm sure this is right up your ballpark. Heather wants to know what we can do to save snow leopards.
Well, I would say that what you're doing right now is a big support to support your local zoo, because and encourage them to continue. Let them know that you're happy that Seneca Park Zoo is supporting snow leopards. It is a huge help for us in so many ways. Just being able to get this out today, right, and to reach you and to reach others that's going to go beyond this. And follow the Snow Leopard Trust, become a member. You can become a member of the Snow Leopard Network for free, which just keeps you in touch with what's happening globally. And I would say just keep informed and engaged in what's happening with snow leopards and with Snow Leopard Trust and Seneca Park Zoo. It's a huge help.
Great. Jennifer, I can't thank you enough. And I wish that you, your family, and your Snow Leopard Trust family are all doing well. And as we know, conservation doesn't stop for COVID. So we're all very busy trying to continue the great work that you're doing. So thank you again. And I did just receive word as we were speaking that Polar Bears International will be on next week with us to do our next version of this. So I want to thank you again. Everybody can go to Seneca Park Zoo website for more information on how they can support Snow Leopard Trust through our zoo. And again, thank you for coming, Jennifer. We really appreciate your time, and thank you, everybody.
Tom. And if anyone does have questions that they want to send to Tom after, I'm happy to answer them throughout the week.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you, everybody,
Bye,
for coming. We appreciate it.